So welcome everybody to the first of 6 in a series of webinars from the Driving Health team, so through Monash University. So this is a 3-year study and we're into our final year. So we've had 2 and a bit years and we're into our final year now of the Driving Health study through Monash University. So it's fantastic to have you all here, and for those who are here live, and also for those who will catch the replay, which will be put up in the Facebook page, our website, our website, so that you can access it at another time. You can share it to others. That would be brilliant. If you share it to others, that would be awesome as well. So the extent of the information and the data that we've collected and analysed over the last 2.5 years so far is pretty extensive. And we didn't want to bore you to death with very super long webinars. And so we're keeping them little short snippety ones. So we are aiming for 20-minute presentation with 10-minute time for Q&A. At the end, you can ask questions through the chat box. You can type them in for usually down the bottom or off to the side if you're on the phone or the computer. So make sure you pop your questions in along the way. I'll moderate those and we will make sure that we can get to as many as we can at the end. So because the information is so extensive and we've got a whole lot of reports on drivinghealth.net, our website, that you can have a look at the reports or the informatics and also the one-page summaries if you're wanting a little bit more in-depth data, and we've got the great big reports in there as well for the full data if you're interested. So we decided to chunk it up into little snippets of topics, and so we've got 6 main topics that we're wanting to share with you over the next 3 weeks. So we will also be sharing information about the intervention that we have been planning based on the website, based on the data from the results. And so we are almost up to the phase that we're wanting to test an intervention going forward as well. So make sure you stay tuned to this webinar until the end, because we're going to let you know a little bit about the details of that and how you could be involved in that going forward, so that we can improve the health and well-being of drivers across Australia throughout the industry. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to who's presenting today, Associate Professor Ross Iles. Many of you will know him or have heard him on radio interviews or all the other things that have happened around driving health in the last 12 months particularly. He's the Deputy Director of the Insurance Work and Health Group at Monash University School of Public Health. And he's also the primary investigator for the Driving Health study. So I'm going to hand over to Ross. Thank you, Ross. Take it from here.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. As you might be able to see on this title slide, it was going to be my colleague, Corrine van Frieden, who would be presenting today. Corrine actually went into labour last night, so we wish her all the best in the coming, hopefully just a few hours, not many hours, but all the best, Corrine. But it does mean that I have the great pleasure of actually presenting the first one of our 6 webinars. And as Elizabeth said, we've got 3 years worth of findings to talk about, but we're really trying to cut those down into bite-sized chunks that are hopefully that people can latch onto. But if you do want the greater detail, the ins and outs, it's all available on our website. And we can ask questions today in the chat box, but you'll also be able to contact the Driving Health team and we'll get back to you. We're more than happy to talk about what we've done and what it means. But today we'll focus on health and fitness and looking into some of the lifestyle factors, including diet and physical activity, which impact the health and well-being of Australian truck drivers. Well, first off, we need to introduce the Driving Health Project. It's a 3-year research partnership between our group, the Insurance Work and Health Group here at Monash University, and our partners Linfox, the New South Wales Centre for Work Health and Safety, and the Transport Workers Union. And we're also fortunate enough to be supported by the National Health and Medical Research Council Partnership Project Scheme. Now, to our knowledge, it's the largest Australian-based study focused on the health and well-being of truck drivers. While there's a large body of research coming from North America and Europe, we believe it's critical to have evidence that represents Australian drivers working under Australian conditions. So this brought about the Driving Health Project, where we have examined multiple sources of data to come up with our findings. Some of this comes from existing sources. So for example, more than 120,000 accepted workers' compensation claims from injured or ill transport workers. And that identified that truck drivers were at a higher risk of work-related injury and illness. We've also used existing data for the first time, for example, accessing 3,500 death benefit claims from the largest industry superannuation fund for workers in transport. And apart from this administrative data, we have also generated new data by engaging with truck drivers themselves. So firstly, we have our online survey, which was completed by more than 1,400 truck drivers. We did a more detailed telephone survey with more than 300 truck drivers. And then we also did some in-depth interviews with drivers and their family members. All of this combined has given us a really clear picture of the health and wellbeing of truck drivers that we believe is representative of the Australian truck driver. So we've managed to include a range of ages of drivers. We've got information about owner drivers and employee drivers and short and long haul drivers. And this has come from all the way across around Australia. So what does the weight and diet of the average Australian truck driver look like? According to findings from our online survey, the great majority are classified as overweight or obese, according to their body mass index. 56% were obese, or roughly 1 in 2, compared to only 1 in 3 when looking at the average Australian male of working age. Our analysis revealed that drivers within these higher weight categories were significantly more likely to report having poor workability and poor general health, as opposed to the drivers that were within the normal range for their body mass index or BMI. Interviews with drivers indicated that they know what healthy eating entails, but the biggest issue is food and the availability of fresh, good food on the road. In fact, it was 68% of drivers completing our telephone survey did not meet the guidelines for a healthy diet and consumed only 1.5 serves of vegetables and 1.3 serves of fruit on average per day. And when we think about the recommended daily intake, it's actually 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit each day. The drivers also tended to have soft drinks, cordials, and caffeinated energy drink almost 3 days a week. We also looked at other lifestyle factors impacting health, such as physical activity, smoking, and health checks. And the good news is that half of the drivers met the recommended guidelines for exercise. On average, our drivers reported doing over 200 minutes of moderate or 85 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. Now, the guidelines recommend 150 minutes of moderate exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise per week. So our sample had our drivers doing more than what was the recommended guidelines. A large proportion also reported doing muscle strengthening exercises such as weightlifting on a regular basis. To quote one of the drivers that we interviewed, they said that if you get into an exercise regime, it can just be walking every day. It increases your serenity of mind, your well-being, your happiness. It absolutely does. So drivers really told us in their own words the importance of actually getting that exercise into their day and how that actually not only improved their physical well-being, but also their mental well-being and their psychological health. Another really encouraging result was the fact that the vast majority, or 77% of our drivers, did not smoke. Of the 22% or so that did smoke regularly, they used cigarettes and only a small proportion used vaping devices. Although the proportion of smokers in our survey was marginally higher than the average Australian male at 17%, it was much lower than our international counterparts. For example, a US study done in 2020 showed that 68% of truck drivers surveyed smoked. And we know that there are a number of health risks associated with smoking. Drivers are also looking after their other aspects of their health, with 90% and 70% respectively having had important health checkups like blood pressure and cholesterol in the last year. Analysis of the interviews with truck drivers and their family members revealed a number of possible solutions to some of these lifestyle issues, like diet and weight, that drivers often struggle with. From a driver's perspective, this included healthy eating leading to healthy action. So those drivers who had family or other mates, work colleagues, encouraging them to be healthier actually found it easier to do so. So actually having supportive family and supportive mates who are doing the same thing make it a lot easier for drivers to be healthy. And drivers told us that choosing healthier options, even just once a day, can actually lead to improvements. And that can then lead to decreased health risks as well. And then actively seeking help. And it was identified that trained professionals for regular checkups are actually really helpful in decreasing health risks. So actually discussing how to eat healthier and how to incorporate exercise into your daily routine is something that you can discuss with your health professional, whether it be your GP or allied health practitioner, such as a physiotherapist. They can be really helpful in terms of how to make only what need to be small changes, but done regularly over time that can actually help with your health. So overall, the findings from the Driving Health Project showed that Australian truck drivers have poor physical and mental health, and there'll be more about mental health in one of our future webinars. The issue is that poor physical and mental health significantly impacts driving performance and workability. We can see that drivers are trying to be healthy at work, trying to exercise and get their health checkups, but a lot of factors outside of their control make it hard. So for example, being able to access fresh, healthy food on the road is a real challenge. From the outset, the driving force behind the Driving Health Project has not been not only to collect data on the health of truck drivers and report this, but to use findings to create evidence-based interventions or programs that will improve the health and well-being of our truck drivers. We know there are currently a number of interventions available aiming to improve the health of drivers. But it's important to note that the vast majority are targeted at the driver themselves and places the burden of responsibility on their shoulders. There are some work-focused approaches out there which help. Our research from the newly released Report 8 from Driving Health, which has just been released on our website, drivinghealth.net, has shown that occupational health and safety training is associated with improved workability, physical and mental health outcomes. Our findings suggest that there is clearly a role for interventions targeted at other levels and stakeholders in the transport industry, not just at drivers. Companies or employers are an important part of supporting drivers to be healthy and stay healthy at work. This is why the Driving Health team, in partnership with industry bodies, has developed the Driving Health Allocator Training Program, which is what I'll spend the last few minutes talking about today. As part of Safe Work Month in October, we are launching a free, short 20-minute online training program for people employed in the supervision of truck drivers. So for example, allocators, line managers, or supervisors. This program aims to increase the knowledge of supervisors on all the factors impacting driver health and well-being, and most importantly, raises the awareness about the factors that supervisors have some control over that will not only support driver health and well-being, but ultimately improve their driving performance and workability. The Driving Health Allocator Training Program, or DHAT, also outlines what supervisors or allocators or line managers or whatever they might be called in your workplace can do to help when they see a truck driver who's struggling, and provide some resources to help make your job easier, empowering supervisors to support drivers to be healthy and stay healthy at work, ultimately improving outcomes for both drivers and supervisors. I think I've gone one slide too far. Many people think, well, it's just up to the driver to be healthy and to stay healthy. But we know from our almost 2.5 years of research, nearly 3, that the solutions are complex and require a multi-pronged approach. It's not just about the driver, It's also about the industry, the regulations, and the way each company works with and supports the drivers to help them to be healthy and stay healthy at work. Now, if you're interested in finding out more, you can click on the link and sign up now to register your interest in the training program online. Once the resource is online, anyone can register and complete it. So we encourage you to share with your colleagues and employees when you might find this useful. Lastly, and most importantly, we need to thank the drivers who've contributed to this huge body of research. We can only hope that with this program, we can give back by creating healthy working lives for truck drivers and their companies. I would also like to extend our thanks to our collaborators for their ongoing support. Thank you all for attending today, and please feel free to email us if you'd like any of the reports or the resources mentioned today. You can find all the content that we've been talking through available on our website, and in a week or so, we'll have the recording of this webinar available as well. We'll now open up for questions. Please, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box or raise your hand, and Elizabeth will read them out, and we'll do our best to answer them now. And if we can't answer them now, we'll get back to you in the not too distant future.
Fantastic. We have our first question from Greg. So thank you, Greg. And he's talking about regarding exercise, did drivers tend to include work-related activities such as loading and unloading a truck as part of the exercise regime?
That's a good question. So we are in the survey, we asked drivers to estimate the amount of time they spent doing activities that would be considered either moderate intensity or vigorous intensity. And normally the way that those things are described are whether they make you huff and puff, whether you're breathing hard afterwards or not. So it's difficult to say whether the drivers actually were only thinking about things they did outside of work, like exercise, like going for a run, or whether they actually include, well, I spent an hour loading the truck today and that made me huff and puff. So I guess the short answer is we're not sure.
I think some of the things, I was the person who interviewed people in the qualitative side of the study, and some of the drivers were talking about how difficult it was to put some sort of activity or exercise in their day because they have like 15-minute breaks and they have to find a toilet first, boil up something to drink or have something to eat, and then jump into the truck. And other people were actually creating time where they, while the kettle was boiling, they were actually walking around the truck 4 times or whatever it was, and that was equal to half a kilometre, or they had worked it out. So they were doing specific things throughout their day in those little tiny time slots. So there was a whole variety of how people were solving this as well. And I think from what they were saying, I didn't actually ask them the specific question that you identified, Greg, but what they were saying was like, yeah, I'm pretty active because I'm loading all day. So I'm loading and unloading and helping to do that. Other people, that was machinery, and they were at the depot, and other people were doing that in the distribution centres. So it again depended if they were long haul, short haul, and how many loads came and went, and the actual processes. So I think there's a variety of what was happening.
I think there are also a number of creative solutions to be able to incorporate more exercise into the day, whether it be tying a piece of TheraBand to the bull bar of the truck to do some resistance exercises. But it's very easy to say those things in terms of, well, you could easily walk around the truck or do some exercises while you're waiting. But it's also rest time, and we know that rest time is really important. And it can actually be quite draining to feel like you've got to fill your rest time with exercise. So it's about finding realistic strategies to incorporate more activity into the day, and that's where and the drivers told us themselves, when they've got their mates, there are other drivers who are trying to do similar things, that actually helps them to find the time and find the ways to do it themselves. I think I certainly know I find it easier to exercise when I've got someone else supporting me, so that's no different for the drivers.
Okay, we have another question from Ahmed. Was weight and height reported by the drivers or measured? Was actually reported, yeah. yes,
it was reported, and we're aware that can provide some challenges in the data. So it was drivers reporting their height and weight, which is what we then turned into their body mass index. one of the challenges of having drivers to engage in a large survey is it's got to be short and sharp. I don't think too many drivers would stop and jump on the scales and then get back to our survey if we asked them to actually weigh themselves first.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so Lindy's got a question. Why, if the exercise level reported is so high, do we still see the majority of drivers in the overweight or obese category? Because there's different concepts, different parts to factors.
Well, I think one thing to think about is we had just over half the drivers reported meeting their daily guidelines. And I think sometimes we think that could be quite high. That actually means that there's still a significant proportion of drivers who aren't meeting those physical activity guidelines. When we know eating a healthy diet is a real challenge as well, it's still I don't want to simplify it too much, but it's still an equation of the energy in needs to be smaller than the energy out for you to lose weight, if you like. So if you're consuming a lot of calories, even if you're burning a number of calories when you're exercising, if you're consuming too many calories, you're still going to end up being overweight or obese. So that can be a real challenge for drivers, that even if they do incorporate that exercise, if they're not having good, healthy food along the way, it's going to be very difficult for them to achieve and maintain a healthy weight.
We also know that sleep and stress levels impact weight and health. And so with spasmodic sleep, reduced sleep, disrupted sleep if you're sleeping in a cab on the road, and also the level of stress, concentration stress, the level of stress in relation to meeting your deadlines and sticking really closely to the regulations so you don't incur any fines. All of these things play a part in obesity as well, and our general health as well. Cool. So we have another question from Kim. Has there been an increase with health issues for drivers since COVID last year?
That's a good question. It's not a question I have data on to be able to answer. We did, as part of the Driving Health Survey, we did run a component, or an extra component of our survey, basically after the first lockdown. And, Elizabeth and I are both in Melbourne, so we're in lockdown number, is it 6? I don't know, who would have forgotten.
Forever.
So unfortunately, I don't have data to answer that, and it's actually the audience might actually be in a better position to answer that if they've noticed that there's been an increase in some of the health concerns. I certainly know that mental health is a big issue for truck drivers, and there's that extra pressure and the extra regulations and rules that need to be followed when there are lockdowns and state borders opening and closing. I can only imagine that would increase the pressure on the drivers, and then put further pressure on mental health. So I guess I would suggest that there would be an increase, but we unfortunately don't have the data to monitor that.
Some of the interviews, they were carried out between June and July last year. So we had gone through the first 3 or 4 months of the pandemic, and it affected drivers in different ways. Some were going, I'm super, super busy, and others were going, I've lost all my work, because all my work was around, for example, one person carried equipment that was only used in leisure time, and everybody was in lockdown, so we had no leisure, so they didn't need the equipment. And so there was again, a sort of continuum of how it was affecting people long term. Yeah. We have a thank you from Greg. Thank you for answering this question, Elizabeth and Ross, about finding time to exercise and or not. It's an interesting challenge for truck drivers to find the time to exercise while at the same time finding time to rest and comply with fatigue requirements. Absolutely. And we know that particularly through the interviews, that enormous pressure that drivers felt in relation to, I'm loading or unloading, I'm waiting for 3 or 4 hours, and technically I'm resting, but they're actually not, because they're still in line, they're still having to move up the line, they're still having to be with their vehicle, they're still totally focused on where they're at, they're just not on the road. And so there's a lot of factors that play into this as well. Ahmed, we had another question. Did long haul drivers have worse health overall?
That's an interesting question, Ahmed. It's one we actually looked at in was it report number 6, Elizabeth, I believe.
Yes.
What we found was that there weren't actually a great deal of differences between long haul and short haul drivers in terms of their health outcomes. We did find that there was a higher level of psychological distress amongst short haul drivers, which we put down to actually spending more time in traffic, for example, more time around other motorists that we know are a constant source of challenge for drivers, might be the best way to put it. So in terms of their health profile, there wasn't a great deal of difference between short haul and long haul drivers. But the report number 6 has all the details there. So Ahmed, if you go to drivinghealth.net, you'll be able to find the full report that actually breaks it down into it. I know there are only 1 or 2 minor differences. I just can't remember exactly what they were off the top of my head, and I don't want to say one or the other in case I'm not quite right. But there are also some summaries around report number 6 as well, which probably has that information in there.
Awesome. And Sugesh brings up the point that, yes, we need to consider the accuracy of the self-reported data for weight and height, absolutely. And we are aware of that, and we describe that and discuss that in the full report in 7 and 8, which was the online survey, and 6, online survey in 6, and 8 was the telephone more in-depth survey. So definitely.
And I think, no, it's a very good point. But I think what we're finding is that we're not surprising a lot of people in the industry or who know drivers and some of the challenges that drivers face, that they are having a difficult time with their health. So yes, it is self-report, but I think what it means is we need to be making every single effort we possibly can to help drivers to be healthy and stay healthy at work, because what they're telling us is that it's not a pretty picture.
Okay, any more questions? That's all that we've had come through at the moment. Any more questions? We've got another couple of minutes that we can be on with you. Any additional questions that you might have from today? As we said, this is a super brief overview of a whole lot of data, because we just wanted to give you the snapshot and the main points, and highlight where you can actually find the in-depth information, which is drivinghealth.net. And also to let you know that we are looking at the intervention stage. So we're doing something about it. We're not just finding out what's happening, we're doing something about it. And we are promoting and created this resource for allocators, line managers, supervisors, as Ross said, whatever you call yourselves in your particular company. And so to do that, I've put it in the chat box. I'll pop it in there again. There is a link that you can sign up to say, yep, I'm interested in being part of that resource. It's a free resource, training resource. It'll be maximum of 20 minutes online. And so you can pop on to the website or pop onto that link I'll put in the chat box, click on there, put your name and email address, and we will let you know in October when it's ready for launch. Okay, we had another question come through from Ahmed. Were drivers asked about employer support of health?
Ahmed, no, they weren't, basically. One of the reasons we didn't ask about that in terms of what level of support their employer provides is we wanted the survey to be completely anonymous, so that drivers could tell us anything and everything and feel safe that that information would be protected and wouldn't necessarily get back to their employer or put their employment at risk. So we know that there are a number of employers out there who actually do a fantastic job of supporting the health and well-being of their drivers. In fact, we have one of our study partners, Linfox, have the Healthy Fox program, which is all about actually trying to help drivers to be healthy at work. But I think like any industry, there's quite a spectrum of how well health can be supported by employers or not. But throughout this study, we don't know who the drivers are employed by, because that way we felt they would actually give us the best information about their health and well-being.
We did ask them about what sort of training they had around fatigue management and occupational safety and health, if they experienced any negative interactions like bullying, harassment, those sorts of things. So they were part of the questionnaire, and so they link to people's health and well-being. So there was sort of some questions around that as well, which are the answers and the responses are in the report. Great. Well, we're up to time, everybody. So thank you so much for being here and staying to the end. And I really hope that you have signed up for being part of the launch of the free training resource, which we are targeting towards allocators, line managers, supervisors, that sort of level of people, so that we can complement all the other interventions that are going on at the moment that are mostly targeted towards the actual driver and supporting them for health and well-being. So we thank you so much. I'll give the final words to Ross.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Without notice. No, thank you very much to everyone for listening. Like we said, we've targeted this resource at anyone who works with drivers. It's really about actually raising the awareness of some of the factors that do impact drivers in their health, and some simple things that you might be able to do to actually help your driver to be healthier at work, which actually means they'll do a better job, which will hopefully make your job easier. Yes. So anyone you can think of who would be interested, it's short, it's free, and it's that first starting point, like we said, to complement other things that are happening out there to help drivers to be healthy and stay healthy at work.
Brilliant. So have a fantastic day. Thank you for being part of this. Goodbye.
Thanks all.